1VI.
It is 7:34 for Tuesday, the 4th of November. Malua. I'm William Terite. It is wonderful to be in your company. Welcome back. If you are just joining us, welcome in. Now, it's a milestone moment for the Kingdom of Tonga. 150 years since the signing of its constitution, one of the oldest in the Pacific. The landmark document established Tonga as a constitutional monarchy and laid the foundation for Tongan identity, law and governance. But what does that legacy mean for today, both at home and abroad? Well, I'm joined now by Tongan community leader Pakilau Manase and Auckland Law School's Assistant Dean Moana Oceania, Dr. Suliana Mone, to unpack the significance of this historic day and also why it still matters. Malua, welcome to both of you. Look, I want to start, and I'll start with you, Dr. Suliana, in terms of 150 years, remarkable in itself. Let's just perhaps start there with, in terms of emotions, what comes to mind when you think of just the significance of, say, the Constitution?
Malalele, good morning. Thank you for having me here. In terms of significance, huge significance. I don't think there's a more important document in Tongan history, in modern Tongan history, because this is the founding document of the modern Tongan state. And to have it last for 150 years without much any amendments or anything, any changes to it, is incredible. Is testament to its lasting power and the kind of hold, the reverence almost the people of Tonga have for the document and for King George I, who promulgated, who granted the people of Tonga the Constitution in 1875. So yes, it's a big deal, and it's a 5-day celebration that culminates in tonight. I think fireworks and Dudu Paganava, the traditional kind of fire by the lighting by the sea tonight in Tonga. It's no small feat, and it's I think it brings a lot of happiness and a lot of pride, and it contains a lot of our history, I think, for many Tongans, and it unites us, particularly for those of us who are not in Tonga.
Indeed. And now I'll come to you, Manase, in terms of your reflections on the Constitution.
Yeah, it's a unique constitution. It apparently is one of the oldest written constitutions in the world, third only to the Magna Carta and the American Constitution. And Tonga has distinct history with regards to the way it has been enacted, in that it wasn't forced on us, unlike what happened in England with the Magna Carta. Basically, all the barons and the chiefs ganged up on the king and forced him to sign. This was something that was freely given by the king and guaranteed his people freedom forever. And so that's something that all Tongans are proud of. And I think it's partly why we go crazy when we celebrate, because we're celebrating our freedom as a people.
And Dr. Suliana, this is perhaps a rather perspective, or perhaps getting a bit too nitty-gritty, but I'm keen to get into it anyway. I suppose, how has the Constitution evolved over the years, or do you think its core principles still resonate with, say, Tongans today?
As you know, a constitution defines like a form of government, how a country is going to be governed, but it's also a reflection of the values of the people of that particular nation and country. And I think the constitution in Tonga still, well, it's as Manase was saying, it's different to Tonga because it was promulgated in 1875, and this was a time when neighboring Pacific Islands were all being colonized. Now, instead of being colonized, we had our own constitution. So we were granted our own constitution. We were united under our very first king. He united Tonga in 1845, and this constitution of his was granted in 1875. So it's also, I think, for a lot of people, a symbol of pride. And pride in the fact that we've been able to, uniquely in the Pacific, to retain sovereignty from the ancient times to the modern day. And a lot, sorry, it's very early. And I think It's as Manase was talking about. It's a book of freedom. It was granted. It was drafted by a missionary in Tonga, a former missionary, Shirley Baker, Reverend Shirley Baker, and in customary law prior to the Constitution, commoners or tu'a did not have any kind of rights, did not have rights to property. Um, Tonga is still a very stratified, hierarchical society, but in pre-Constitution Tonga, it was very much more um, rule instead of almost mostly ceremonial that we see in Tonga today. So prior to the Constitution, when he speaks about freedom, and Shirley Baker did tout the Constitution as a book of freedom when it was first promulgated, it had a lot to do with the commoners. And you'll see in the first few clauses of the Constitution, it speaks about God all have been all equal because we're all children of God and no differences in blood. And that is a reference to the old religion where the kings and, the Egi, the ruling classes, had divine blood. So they had higher rank and they had rights almost that made them human. And the commoners or tu'a, because they were descended from worms and lacked this divine essence, this having no kind of blood ties to the gods, were did not have so many rights. So in granting the Constitution, some of the very first clauses of the Constitution touch on giving people the right to own their property, the right to work for themselves, to keep the profits of their work, and of equality between all the classes. And that's why I think for the general population, the common aotearoa is so embraced. It's not just freedom in terms of freedom from any kind of colonial power in that foreign country superpower and annexing Tonga is freedom within. Like it wasn't just an external kind of freedom from colonial powers. It was freedom for commoners, which is probably 90% of the population, freedom for them from arbitrary rule, almost slavery. And that began in kind of documents that led up to the Constitution, 1864 Emancipation Edict, which freed kind of commoners from slavery. So yeah, that is why a lot of people still hold that dear, that document dear. Of course, as time goes by, and this happens all over the world and not just in Tonga, society, the values, ideologies that kind of underpin change, the thinking of the collective change. And there has been some shifts in terms of over the years, and particularly we saw the riots in 2006, which led to the amendments of 2010, the constitutional reforms in 2010. I don't know if you're aware of that, but those are some of probably the most significant amendments to the Constitution to date. And that was a move towards basically the executive being made up of those that are elected by the people. So prior to that, it was basically customary law. The king appointed his own cabinet. The executive was entirely appointed by the king to govern at his pleasure, which is a reflection of customary law. The Tonga would rule, and then there would be chiefs, eki, that would kind of govern or rule kainga collectives, villages on his behalf. So prior to 2010, that's what was codified in Tonga.
Right.
And Tonga is unique that way because all other Pacific Island nations, because they were colonized, they have a customary legal system that operates parallel to the formal imposed kind of legal system, which they've adopted for themselves now. But in Tonga, that didn't happen. When King George the First promulgated the Constitution, whatever kind of customary laws were acceptable to himself and to the missionaries, Christianity, were codified in his constitution. And that had a lot to do with the right of the king to rule, that right not being based on divine ties to Tangaloa anymore, but on the Christian God now,
Right.
being anointed of the Christian God.
Yeah.
And there have been changes, efforts to change, but at the same time, a lot of the values that are kind of imbued in the Constitution, the freedom of the commoners, the king as a head, as a father of the nation, as the who reigns, not in the way that the monarchy in Great Britain reigns, ceremonial, but like he truly does exercise political power. He governs, and the rights of the Egi classes to tofia, to huge to estates. lands, and to look after their kind of gainga or collectives that live within his lands or villages. These are things that are very kind of central to still to this day to the Tongan identity, to Tongan psyche,
Yeah.
and while there has, a lot of pushes for change, it has been slow, and I do feel that's better. I do feel that while we can make comment, like a person such as myself, academics and others may comment from overseas, I think it is best to leave the evolution of the Tongan constitution to those living in Tonga. And it has lasted this long because it has reflected Tongan values. That has its longevity is premised on that,
Yeah.
on the respect of the people to the royal family and to the Ege classes. Um, it has it does still reflect values that are key, that are very important to Tongans
Yeah.
and who they are to this day. And I think the changes are incremental, and as we see so much going on politically around the world, and we human rights and democracies touted everywhere, but we see a lot of these countries that are supposedly beacons of human rights and democracy not acting in ways that reflect these ideologies.
Yeah.
So while there is a lot of critique in Tonga, I truly, I think this is best left to Tonga
Sure.
to decide for themselves.
Yeah.
Any kind of shifts to the values that they think should underpin the Constitution.
Yeah.
My only kind of comment towards that is that we include the voices, everyone's voice,
Yeah.
but particularly including more groups that are traditionally not so much heard or taken into account. For example, women, and more vulnerable groups. These voices are also taken into account when discussions of how our constitution should evolve and should stay relevant to Tongans in
Sure.
Tonga and overseas in the modern day.
Yeah.
So sorry
Okay.
about that.
No, that's totally fine. It's good to get these explanations. Pakilau, I'm going to bring it back to Manase in terms of patriotism, say abroad. We've got Tongans, obviously. Here in New Zealand, and it was on full display, as is always, which is wonderful and is beautiful to see. For example, the game on Sunday. What do you think is behind that strong sense of patriotism, even being abroad?
It's a really good question, William. And if you could bottle that, I think we would end all the suffering in the world. It's called Matiaki Whanua. It literally means to die for your land, and hence the name Mate Matonga. And it's enshrined in our constitution because there's three parts of the constitution. First one talks about our rights as human beings, basically our personal freedoms, the government, how it's run, and the land. And amongst all of those three key parts is this running thread of basically serving and ensuring that within your freedom there are some parameters, and like in the constitution, as the good doctor has mentioned, there are parts to it that talk about things like tenure, land tenure. There's things about the Sabbath. Unfortunately, the game on the weekend was played on a Sunday, and there's a lot of noise around that. But at the end of the day, that was beyond our control. But we were very, very mindful of that, and the irony being that today we're celebrating the 150th celebration of our anniversary of our constitution. So I think it's a challenge for the powers that be, like the New Zealand Rugby League, New Zealand Rugby Union, to remember our traditions and to respect that, because you saw how we all rocked up to Eden Park, about 40,000 people, and we should have had more leeway and say in terms of those minutiae of details around how the game is played. Little things like the announcer, John Pulu was basically muzzled. The DJ was muzzled and basically told what to play. And that's not on. And our constitution is about freedom of expression, and allowing people to be happy and enjoy their lives. And this is something that a lot of people don't see because they think kingdom, they think it's a monarchy, you're restricted. It's no more restricted than any other country, because I've lived here and I've lived, born in Tonga, I've seen the differences. I'm a traditional matapule, so I have a cultural role as well. And all the ha'a systems that the doctor talked about, all the different stratifications of Tonga, they have their own peculiarities. And the one thing that Tonga has is almost like a caste system. We've got the king and the royal family at the top, we've got the nobles, the mtaapule churches, and then the commoners at the bottom. But in saying that, we're happy where we are. There's no social stratification. You can't wake up tomorrow morning and be a noble all of a sudden. So Tongans know their place. And a lot of that is written into our constitution. And we're happy with our lot, most of us. Some of us go overseas and look at America and hear all this talk about freedom and democracy and all this stuff. But then see their actions overseas and other countries, not just America, which belie all this talk of freedom and independence and all of this interfering in other people's business, and the pain and suffering that causes. Tonga doesn't do that. Tonga is based on Christian values, Christian principles, and the king who turned to Christianity was a huge part in writing that into our constitution.
And I just want to pick up, you made a post on your Facebook that I reflect on, and I was actually like, wow, that's actually also worth highlighting. You said, respect the haka, remember whose lands we are privileged to be on as well. It all kind of, again, beautiful in itself. Could you elaborate on what you meant by that?
Yeah, I mean, it's common sense, and most Tongans know that anyway.
Yeah.
But it was more for me to remind, particularly some of our more, some of our younger New Zealand born who may not understand the matiaki whanua, because we matiaki our whanua back home in Tonga, that's our whanua, but also here, this is our adopted home. You would have heard our people sing the New Zealand national anthem as loud, if not louder, than the Tongan one.
That's right.
Because we are also New Zealanders. We're Tongans, but we're proud New Zealanders as well. So that was just a reminder. It wasn't like, me trying to tell people to suck eggs. Everybody knows they've got common sense, but there are the few that spoil it for the many.
Yeah. And back to you now, Doctor. In terms of, I just want to, before we wrap this up, reflect on patriotism, right? Again, I think one of the beauties of Tongan culture is just you go all out, you go all in when it comes to these kind of celebrations and patriotism on full display. Why do you think, and I don't want to try and pin against other cultures, but it's almost unmatched or unrivaled in terms of that sense of patriotism?
Oh, for me,
Yeah.
um, I do want to touch a little bit on what Manase was talking about. So a huge unifying factor for Tonga was Christianity. And that again, the very first clause of the Constitution touches on Christianity, and clause 6 of the Constitution prohibits trading on the Sabbath, so it declares the Sabbath sacred. And as you were saying, there was some issue with that with our team playing on Sunday. So I think the Constitution it does give us each a kind of a place in our collective. In our collective, we all kind of are given a place in the collective. We all have a very united a reverence almost for this, particularly this king is turning out, and this and the royal family is a very beloved monarch amongst our people. They're very they're seen everywhere, involved in almost everyday activities with leading in the land. So there is this whole the reverence for the royal family, the deep respect for, as he was Manase was saying, for our traditional leaders, our chiefs, our Eke classes. We kind of all have an understanding of our place, and we all have Tonga's homogenous, whereas other Pacific countries, there's a mixture usually, but I think in Tonga almost 99% of us are Tongan, and we have a couple of different dialects, but we have one main language. So the cultural practices don't really, there are particularities, as Manase was saying, from different Ha'as, villages, but generally we are kind of united. We have a broad general understandings of what our customs are, what our beliefs are, our place in the world. And we understand, I think Tongans generally understand that when we work together And I think that should be something that should be looked at as a Tongan value, that when we all work together, things turn out better. And not just work together, but there is, as Manase was saying before, mateaki, mamahi i mea. So it's Tongan culture, it's Tongan custom that whatever we do, whether it's something small or big, and the word for it is whatongia, a duty. So as I don't know if you're aware, but in our Tongan culture, we don't have rights as much as we have a duty to the collective. So in performing your duty to the collective, you're supposed to put your like absolute utmost best you can into it. And I think all of us who are supporters of our teams who don't actually play, the players are expected to play, to put it all out there, like literally their lives on the line. And I've heard one player is hospitalized currently, but also us, those of us who are not playing, who are cheering. We have a duty, we have a whatongia to go there and to support and sing as loud as we can and parade with our flags and wear our red and all that. So we have kind of a very ancient kind of dictator roles. That's almost like we're born understanding, because I think it's almost in our DNA. Um, that's almost in our DNA that we're born with. So it's just the Constitution has kind of codified that at that particular point in time in 1875, has codified these values, how these values are to be expressed, particularly in terms of governing the nation. But values continue to change. What we understand, how our values are expressed, will continue to change, and time will tell if this means the Constitution is going to undergo any further transformation. But as a little nation, we take pride in the fact that we were kind of like never colonized by another nation. And I won't touch too much on it because there's a lot of debate on that, and with Tonga had its own empire in the Pacific. So we're very proud people, and we understand our strength has been in our collective unity and in each of us giving our absolute all in performing our duties for the collective, our whatongia, to our families and to our guide, to whatever ha'a, a community, our churches, to Tonga, whatever it is, it's absolutely expected that we do our best with it. And so while it appears to outside that this is passion, while people have passion and patriotism, to us it's the bare minimum. It's what's expected. And yes, I hope I haven't confused you with all my rambling this morning,
No.
but that's what I can speak to
Totally.
in terms of.
Look, Manase, just final word from you in terms of whether you have any final thoughts or comments, is obviously a day as significant as this.
Yeah, if I may, and just want to thank the doctor for providing us with the amazing insights into the actual Constitution. I have a copy of Dr. Sonelatu Kefu's Constitution book here. If I may, William, please, if I may read just a very short clause, the first clause of Part 1. The Declaration of Rights, what I think is quite beautiful, and it spells out the vision of the Constitution. Since it appears to be the will of God that man should be free as he was made, all men of our one blood, therefore, shall be the people of Tonga, and all who sojourn or may sojourn in this kingdom be free forever. And all men may use their lives and persons and time to acquire and possess property, and to dispose of their labor and the fruit of their hands, and to use their own property as they will. When it says man, that means human, man, woman. But for me, this is a beautiful testament to the vision of Tupou I. He didn't want to restrict, even though he was actually restricting his own kin, his chiefs, his fellow chiefs, Ma'afu, my chief, Vaea, Tuiwakano, because they had power, full power and authority over the body and person of their people. Even life and death, they could kill anybody in their village when they wanted to. That's how much power the chiefs had. What the Constitution did was free people from that kind of oppression. Just being honest here. That's basically what it did. And what Tupou did, gave rules to Tonga. And that's love. Who wouldn't want to have that kind of absolute power? Because he would have that same power too. But he limited his own power out of the love for his people. That's Mateaki Whanua, that's Mate Mato.
Thank you very much. There was a beautiful way to wrap things up. Thank you both to you. I really appreciate you having your time this morning. That is, of course, Tongan Community Leader Pakilau Manase Lua and Auckland Law School's Assistant Dean Moana Oceania, Dr. Suliana Mone. Thank you very much to you both. Have a lovely day.
Off